merchandise. So you've got to call us later on during the show. We'll flash the numbers later, so stick around for that too.
Yes, so all that coming up, but first let's take a look at what's making today's Talk of the Town.
All right, so we're going to start off with some news about our election coming up. The headline reads, EC 13th general election to have a minimum of 10-day campaigning period. Now, this was decided by the Election Commission. Chairman Tan Sri Abdul Aziz Muhammad Yusuf, and they said this on Thursday. Now, he said the decision was made at the Commission's special meeting on Wednesday, where they discussed each of the recommendations made by the Parliamentary Select Committee on electoral reform.
Yes, now the meeting also acknowledged that the process to appoint the EC chairman, deputy chairman and EC members should be reviewed to instill confidence that the body is truly free of any influence of the executive and the legislative. The meeting also agreed that the body be restructured with a view to giving it appropriate legal powers.
Now, talking about these recommendations, there are actually 22 made by the Parliamentary Select Committee. Now, 7 of these 10 recommendations are in its interim process, in its interim report, have been implemented, including the use of indelible ink, advanced voting for armed forces and police personnel, cleaning up of the electoral roll, doing away with objection period for candidates on nomination day, and providing facilities for Malaysians overseas to register as postal voters.
Now, the EC chairman goes on to say, now, this review will ultimately raise the need to increase its human resources and upgrade of posts, as well as sufficient financial allocation in line, of course, with moves to strengthen the EC structure. Now, on the PSC's recommendation that a committee be set up to supervise and scrutinize the EC's efforts to clean up the electoral roll, he said, now, this is contrary to the EC's position as an independent body as provided for under the Federal Constitution.
Now, the chairman, ended his statement saying that the EC will always strive to do its best in carrying out its function and responsibility fairly to all those who are involved in the election.
And moving on to another topic that a lot of people are talking about, of course, the gatherings at Dataran Merdeka. And here's a statement from our Minister of Higher Education, Dato' Khalid Nordin, who said that on his Twitter account that the students who were involved in these what turned to be violent demonstrations, and I quote, should not expect sympathy when such incidents take place.
Now, he said that no one told them to camp out at the Dataran, so when these things happen, don't cry for pity. Now, earlier this week, Khalid, instead of addressing the argument by students for the abolishment of study loans under the National Higher Education Fund Corporation, which they said were oppressive, told students who are not happy with the system to return their borrowings. Now, Khalid's latest comments were actually made in the wake of the attack, like you mentioned, just then, on the occupied Dataran site at Dataran Merdeka, where a mob of 60 thugs attacked the students in their tent in the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, now this camp started out, with just a dozen of students, but later saw a hive of activity. Now, what actually started as a peaceful protest were these individuals who were invited to give free lessons on various subjects, including a crash course on Arabic, caricature drawing, and poetry.
Now, this was supposed to be a symbolic gesture of their demand for free tertiary education.
Yes, and of course, the calls for free tertiary education gained momentum following Pakatan Rakyat's pledge to implement free tertiary education for all Malaysians, in the run-up to campaigning to the next general election.
Okay, with that, we'll move along to some foreign news. So this is good news for Burma. Yesterday, we read out the article where Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader of the NLD, Democratic Party, is making her first trip out of the country, and she's actually going to Europe. And hopefully the UK too. Now, I think in line with that, EU has decided to suspend most of Burma's sanctions. Now, European diplomats are reported to have reaching a preliminary agreement to suspend most of their sanctions against Burma. Now, final decision will be taken on Monday at a meeting of EU foreign ministers.
Yes, however, a source from the BBC has said that it's most likely that a big chunk of the current sanctions will go, only the arms embargo would stay in place. Now, according to the sources, the travel ban and asset freeze for many government officials would end. Aid and development money would be allowed into the country, as would investments into key parts of the economy, particularly the mining and logging sectors. And exports, of course, from the EU would be, exports from Burma would be allowed into the EU. In fact, there has been talk of establishing a preferential trade agreement with Burma.
That's kind of good. Of course, this is all in reaction to the reform process that we're seeing taking place in the country right now. Now, it actually has been underway since the polls in 2010. It actually brought a transaction from military to nominally civilian rule. Not only that, the government freed hundreds of political prisoners, including pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Her NLD party in 2010 boycotted the elections. Now they're actually back into the political process. And like we mentioned just then, Aung San Suu Kyi is actually leaving the country for the first time.
Yes, actually, I found something very interesting on Twitter this morning. Now, she's part of a group, or rather was part of a group called the Elders. Now, it sounds like a group of superheroes, but in fact, they are not. They're basically a group who fight for world peace and, human rights, etc., etc. And she is leaving that group because of her position in Burma. So now that she has, attained what she set out to achieve, she's now working for the country instead of the whole. So she's like, let's take a step back from the Elders.
Yes.
And look them up on Twitter. It's very interesting. They have about 33,000 followers, and it was initially set up by Nelson Mandela in the 70s.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So make sure you look them up. That's quite interesting. Anyway, with that, we're going to move along to some more foreign news. Entertainment news. Now, yesterday we read out the article. We announced that Dick Clark died at 82. Of course, the world will be missing him. Another legendary, iconic personality has passed.
Yes.
The band's Levin Helm dies at 71.
Yes. Now, he was, of course, the drummer of the band called The Band, and he died from throat cancer at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. And now, in a statement read out by his daughter Amy and wife Sandy, they said, "Thank you, fan music lovers who have made his life so filled with joy and celebration. He has loved nothing more than to play, to fill the room up with music, lay down the backbeat, and make the people dance. He did it every time he took to the stage."
That's fantastic. A man who's definitely living his passion. There you go. That's him in action. Now, well, he's actually worked with, other than the band, he's actually worked with several iconic, legendary rock stars. First was, Bob Dylan. Before that, Ronnie Hawkins.
Yep.
And then he actually worked with Bob Dylan whilst Bob Dylan was embracing electric rock.
Yeah. Now, any drummer, basically, worth his salt would know Levin Helm, and they would know the cue, play that Levin Helm feel. He had a very smooth backbeat, So I guess all the drummers out there are lamenting this great loss. Now, it was also interesting because Helm also took a little time out to explore movies. He, of course, started alongside Loretta Lynn, and I think the movie was called The Coal Miner's Daughter. They also started Sissy Spacek. And in fact, Martin Scorsese made a movie that chronicled the band's final years into their breakup.
Really? That's quite interesting. Do you have any idea what that's called? The band also?
No, it wasn't called The Band. I actually can't remember what it's called, but we'll Google it for you later and let you know.
There you go. So really cool things to, watch, some movies to watch during the weekend. Anyway, we're going to finish up with the last piece of news. Very interesting, yeah? A man, 92, still working at post office. Now, this is coming out from Pittsford in New York, I believe. Anyway, this a New York State man named working for the U.S. Postal Service when he was 70, and he is now 92. He's the oldest postal worker in the district, including 8 states. I tell you, this is Charles Cook. And he works as a supervisor at the mail processing center in Henrietta, and obviously is the oldest employee in the district, right? It includes Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Tennessee, Delaware, and even portions of New York, West Virginia, and New Jersey.
He sounds like a very resilient elderly man. He says, "If you think I'm going to be replaced and they're going to bring in some greenhorn to do my job, you're crazy. I'm going to be here for another 25 years. And what's really interesting is that how this got his position was when he actually had gone for a medical checkup.
Yes.
And his doctor had told him at the age of 70 to do something that involved a lot of physical activity. And I guess it's worked because this guy has now lived till 92.
And he still says he wants to work for another 25 years. Now, here's the thing, you know, it's really great because a lot of people after they reach a certain age, they're like, you know, I think I'll retire, spend time with the grandkids. This guy's like, you know, he's at 70 and he's like, you know, still years ago, he was thinking that I want to live longer, therefore I should look for some work. And now he's 92, still working, still very healthy.
And I think that is very true of a lot of old, you know, elderly people. A lot of them don't want to retire simply because they know they'll be stuck at home, you know, not doing much. So a lot of them continue working into their golden years. And kudos